We're live.
Hello.
Hello.
La, la, la.
It's always a good night when we have our friend coming on.
Yes, welcome all. It is Thursday night. It's going to take a while. Thursday night generational change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and yes, I did need to get water because this is going to be a very thorough conversation.
Oh, I've got questions.
Well,
I have questions.
what questions do you have?
I'm not so sure yet.
Well,
They'll come to me. No, I do. I have federal job guarantee questions that I've gotta talk about. And you know, the always sort of, I need to know the good quick response when somebody's like, well, but the deficit.
I'm going to get this out of the way right now. I think Steve Grumbine is one of the best people we have.
Yes.
In all of independent media. Very few, if any, work as hard as he does, especially about the issues that really matter. His primary objective is solving the economic crises in this country right now. He is not about getting clicks and looking cool.
Which is important to understand, that if we don't understand the economic problem, then we can't fix any of the other problems. So that's the situation.
Considering everything that he's been dealing with and all the things that he's been working on, I have been very adamant that we would love to have him as a monthly guest on our live stream to come and talk about the economic plights of our day. This is going to be a lot of fun. As always, you know him from the Real Progressives and the Macro and Cheese podcast, Steve Grumbine. As always, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hello, I came dressed for the occasion.
What do you got? Hold on. We're having, why? Oh, there we go. Oh, of course. Love that. I love that.
Is that
Yes.
BNA?
No, it's not a Beanie Baby.
What
It's a dancing bear. Please. First of all, he has a still your face.
Well, I know
Okay.
what the hat is.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you? Because by the way, everybody, he put out a post the other day with a picture of RFK Jr. and Jerry Garcia, and
I didn't put that out.
What do you mean? Your comment was okay. So then he commented on it saying, "Will you legalize cannabis?" But yet, that's it. That's all he said. No comment about Jerry. He made no reference or anything. No steal your face logo. No bears.
The
no
first
nothing.
thing I think of when I think of Jerry Garcia is smoke a little doobie.
Well,
that's
not
me.
okay.
I think about Papa Tab.
I think about a lot of things. We're all just dancing bears dancing around the sun, man.
Fair enough. We had, I spoke to our mutual producer, Colin, about putting together a little something. I don't know if it's ready or not. Colin, put it in the private chat if there's anything there. But, we obviously have a lot of things to talk about tonight. And, of course, Bidenomics is something that, look, call it what you want. It's just kind of funny that, we're even having this conversation. We're having this conversation about nothing. It's honestly, it's like a Seinfeld episode. I mean, if you think about it, it's a conversation. When somebody were to ask you, like, what is it about the Biden presidency? What can you say about it? The answer is nothing.
A lot of tripping. And not the good kind. Not the good kind, interestingly.
Yeah. Yes. I tell you what, man, my mind has been absolutely overwhelmed with the idea of once they finally get shrooms going, like once shrooms are legal, how different the world is going to be. That to me, I don't know if I'll live long enough to see it, but I'm hoping.
Well, you have a couple of places. You have a couple of places that have it. In DC, you can get them.
Shrooms?
Yes. Oh yeah.
What?
Shrooms.
What?
Shrooms in DC, and there's also in Oregon. Yeah. But it's happening.
No kidding. Well, fingers crossed. I want to be part of that activism.
Yeah.
Let me be part of that activism.
Do you want? So when we were just there in May for the event for Julian Assange, I, of course, had to check out some dispensaries, and sure enough, they have all the psilocybin edibles, which for me that doesn't really do anything, but they do sell mushrooms. They actually sell.
You can get spores. I know you can get spores. I know you can get cultures. I don't know that you can get. That's pretty amazing. So good. The world is growing up.
Right.
The world is growing up.
The thing about psychedelics or just cannabis in general, to me, that is a winning issue. Like, that is something that if you ran on that, you're going to do well. And you'll do well on the GOP side, too. Like, this is not some...
Yeah, they don't have issues with those.
No, and well, not only that, but it's just so obvious that if you do not come out in support of at least decriminalization of cannabis, at a minimum, what you're proving is that, yeah, I take big pharma and private insurance money, and that's that. And you should be, even if it isn't of top of mind in that moment, like everybody should be pegged as somebody who just kowtows to big pharma and private insurance if they're not willing to say, yeah, I support cannabis and I support people's right to do as they please. It's like, are you libertarian or are you not libertarian? And everybody wants to claim it until push comes to shove, and then they're like, oh, no, I'm just a hack. At least it's what it seems like.
All right, my friends. I love you guys. Thanks for making this fun.
Always. So where do we start? Like, well, there's so much crap going on, man. Like, I don't even, like, what stories in particular did you want to hit? Because, like, I could talk about a myriad of things.
Well, we apparently have our video ready because Colin had something that we were going to play.
And what is the said content of said video?
Well, for those of you who have obviously been paying attention to what matters, because I use that term loosely because we're constantly distracted by BS. One side and the other side want to prove just how more corrupt the current president and former president are, rather than focusing on the fact that our economy is in complete taters at this point. We do have a nice video that I think you're going to enjoy. It's
brief, yes?
Yes, it's brief,
okay.
But it's to highlight our wonderful guest here who has a lot to say. So without further ado, our very own Steve Grumbine is going to break down why Bidenomics is a joke.
Republicans had hoped that Bidenomics was something they'd be able to attack, particularly on the inflation front. And so he's leaning into it and attempting to turn what could have been a weakness into a strength and saying, this is working for you. The Inflation Reduction Act is working for you. My theory of building from the middle out instead of the top down is working for you.
It was maybe a year ago that they started the interest rate hikes, year plus,
year and a half, 2 years, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so within that space, you know that any economic actions you take have to take time to go. They're like leading indicators, lagging indicators in the economy. By raising interest rates and continue to raise interest rates, what they've done, and you'll notice they're talking about the strong economy. Why? Because the interest income channel is soaring. The rich are getting huge monies from their stock, from their bonds, from their other investments that have interest rate through the roof. They're making big bucks while simultaneously Jane and Joe Sixpack are out there running up their credit card at 35% and are trying to buy the same thing that they could have bought if they had cash. They're having to put it on that credit card at 35%. And then they're paying compounding interest on that same thing as well.
I don't have an explanation for why people think it's bad, because objectively it is good. It's hard to imagine it could be much better. It truly is. I mean, yes, inflation could be lower, but unemployment could hardly be lower. The economy, our economy is growing. Our GDP is growing. Interest rates, were ratcheted up quickly beginning in March of 2021. And 2022. I would have thought, frankly, that would slow the economy down a lot faster and further than it has, which just goes to prove it takes a long time for higher interest rates to work their way into the economy. But, bankruptcies are not, exploding left and right. The economy is still growing. I don't know. Looks pretty good to me.
Do you think there's an element, people just like being unhappy?
People like being unhappy about a lot of things in America right now, and unfortunately.
These fucksticks sit there and try and put on a show, making it seem like, hey, everything's great, because in aggregate, it looks great. When you don't look at targeted areas and you can just do the big thing, that just shows you what a little blip the income for regular Main Street is, that it doesn't even register. The fact is that investors are making money hand over fist. Friends, even in the MMT community, that elevate this investor grade bullshit. And I got to be honest with you, this is where the class division separates. This is when you realize, hey, just because you know MMT doesn't mean you got a good heart. And folks are sitting there literally celebrating this kind of bullshit freaking It literally is theft. It's wage theft. It is literally nothing but paper money moving around in the stratosphere amongst the investors. It's not hitting Main Street.
I mean, could you think of anything worse than a guy saying, do people just like being miserable?
People just like being
Is that
Oh
what
my
they're
God.
doing now? That's what they're saying?
It got me just as hard watching it then as it did when I was watching it with Jordan. I got to tell you, I mean, when you are an investor and your portfolio looks great and you can see the numbers, I use the term aggregate. Okay. When you think of 350 million people in America and all the economic activity that goes into that, an aggregate, it looks good because there's so much money being pumped into the top with the increase rates that we've been dealing with from the Fed, that these people are living la vida loco. The rest of us, I don't know about you all, but I know that come October 1, I'm going to be looking for a whole lot of different ways of surviving because that's when the student debt hits.
Yep.
Okay. And I am terrified. Let me say it in words that may be really striking. I am so terrified. I'm living like a feral cat. Okay? I'm living like a feral animal, literally on edge. My body feels filled to like you could put a pin in my thing and just squirt everywhere because I'm so filled with pressure, trying to figure out how the fuck I'm going to survive when that hit comes. And I'm just one dude. There is $2 trillion, more than $2 trillion in student debt that is going to be called on come October 1, September, but the payments begin in October. And worse, these loan servicing companies are out there fucking people with the rates, fucking people with the payments. There's no way. Like when I last paid a student debt payment, I think my payments were somewhere in the vicinity of $599 a month.
Oh my God.
Last check I had, they're going to be $1,000 a month or more. So I don't know about you all, but where do you come up with $1,000 a month? Just sort of out of nowhere, right? And I know it was coming, but I knew $599 was coming, and that was terrifying. 1,000? 1,300?
Yeah, we're looking at a major impending disaster. Like,
do I gotta bust a cap on somebody? Do I gotta collect the VIG? What do I have to do to survive? And the thing is, and this is the problem that most assholes don't understand. Once that student debt goes into default, it's one thing that they can maybe garnish your paycheck. They could maybe put a lien on your home. They could do, but that's not really what the problem is. They start reporting that immediately to the credit agencies. Once it's reported to the credit agencies, if you don't keep that job, the next time you go for a job, one of those things is looking at your credit report. So now you're going to get screwed out of the next job. It's worse than that. You better hope your living situation is really, really awesome, because if you're a renter and you've got to go find another apartment, your credit rating is going to hit you there too. So you're going to get hit with a student debt bill that's maybe $1,000 a month that you have no idea how the fuck you're going to come up with the money for it. And you possibly can't get work, and you possibly can't get housing. And now you're going to be a homeless person with fucking degrees sitting there laying on the goddamn sidewalk wondering what happened. And
you'll
this
be
is the
frying
Biden
on the
economy.
sidewalk. You'll be frying on the sidewalk, getting third-degree burns like those people out in Phoenix that are frying on the sidewalk.
Let me tell you something. What's going to happen is this. Somebody's going to be walking by with their cell phone. I'm going to be laying there shivering on a sidewalk, and they're just going to keep texting as they step over me, because that's how it rolls. That's how America is right now. That's the libertarian taint that has affected society. And it's that me, myself, and I, and hey, you took out that loan. You deserve to pay you shouldn't have gotten a degree in business after all. Business? You got a degree in business? You got an MBA? Oh, well, you shouldn't have got that degree in gender. Well, you got a degree in technology management? What? Oh, you're working. You already have a professional level job. Why can't you afford it, you dumb fuck? Well, because this is the Biden economy. This is the neoliberal era. We have not seen wages keep up, not only with inflation, but with everything else. And for 50 years, we've seen stagnating wages. And for 50 years, we have been living our worst life. We have not lived a good life. So people, their imaginations are fucked. They're shunted. They're not thinking clearly, and they're punching down. They want to keep people in the crabs in a barrel. They don't want anybody escaping. They don't want us all to be free because, damn it, they paid their student loan back when it was $2,000 to get a master's degree. And they don't want you out when you make it's your $122,000 for that same degree. Okay.
You know what? What's interesting though? So I just paid, like, coincidentally, I think it was like a year and a half ago that we finally paid off my law school. And I never had a real issue with it. I never had a usury problem. I was like consolidated at 4.25 for, forever. And so for me, yeah, I went to a private school and it was expensive, but I never felt like I was taken advantage of or abused by the system. And I think that is a distinction that people don't understand has changed. So for me, I have this theory that, yes, I did take out those loans for law school, and I absolutely believe that everybody should pay back what the loan that they took out. That's not the issue. It's that you have people paying usury interest rates that end up basically screwing them for eternity, where they're paying way more than what they took out. So now we're taking advantage of it. So I guess, like, I don't mind people having to pay back reasonable loans. But it's just, this is not the situation we're living in now.
Let's take away yours, okay? Because let's just assume that we're slaves on the plantation.
Yeah.
And I've been a slave for 30 years. You're a relative newcomer to the plantation. You've only been doing about 6 months on the farm, right? And I'm like, I'm what's his name? Samuel L. Jackson in Django. I'm Steven, scowling away. And it's like, well, I paid I was a slave. There's no reason for you to get out of it. Well, why not? Why wouldn't you want to free people from this debt burden, period? Because here, let's just be honest. If that debt was if Peter, if you loaned me $120,000 to go to school and I took this loan out from you in good faith, that would be a different story because that's a person-to-person type deal. The problem is that within the federal student loan industry, it is issued by the currency issuing federal government. There is not a single person that gets any benefit from that. The school has already been paid. The government treats it like a tax. It gets rid of it. It's gone. However, there's this one parasite in the middle. Similar to all the insurance companies for healthcare, there is loan servicing companies out there. They created jobs. They created a new industry, the loan collection industry. Okay. And this loan servicing, as they call it, industry, this loan servicing industry skims a tiny percentage of every loan they service. So they have to go bid to the federal government. They have to show they've done great customer service. How do I know this? I worked at FIA for a year and I was in their program management office. So I was able to do projects and learn the business inside out. These guys, they skim a little bit off of it and they got so much money. And all that money that they take from poor student loan borrowers, okay, they use and they say, maybe we can go ahead and give a grant for some random thing. Instead of the government just wiping this fucking thing out. There is no value, Jen, in me or you or someone else paying a student debt when in reality it's purged.
Right.
The servicing company takes its piece and it's gone. It doesn't.
Yeah, I want to just be clear. I am not one of those people that believes because I paid mine everyone. I actually believe in complete student loan forgiveness. I believe in debt jubilee. So I'm just saying that I don't care, that I paid mine, but that is an annoying argument.
The fact that we're still having this conversation is ridiculous because the fact of the matter is we do not have tuition-free public college and tuition-free trade schools, which is exactly the solution to the problem. And the one thing that people forget is that not only are we talking about student loans, which is insane because the cost of going to school has grown so exponentially since 1980, there's also the factor, more than anything else, of Wall Street's control over this because it's the interest payments that are really what's killing everybody.
It's way. Let me tell you what goes.
It's more nefarious than that.
More egregious.
Yeah.
What has happened is that just like the fucking mortgage crisis, Those rich sacks of shit were betting on the market for the houses. They were shorting the market.
Right.
They were getting these synthetic CDOs shorting the market, and they didn't, just like with Silicon Valley Bank, didn't have enough liquid assets to be able to cover the loss. Okay. In this particular case, I mean, it gets worse. There are people out there literally shorting the student debt industry. They don't want us to be forgiven because they're making another buck hand over fist betting on students going belly up. I'm not even joking. This is the perversion that the Biden economy is supporting, even though Biden didn't 100% agree. You know, Biden was the son of a bitch that made it impossible to delete and get rid of student debt in bankruptcy. He did all sorts of bankruptcy reform where he,
you know what that is?
I hate this man.
It's Bidenomics. That's what Bidenomics is right there.
And I say, but what about Trump? Fuck
I know.
you.
Here's the thing is that there are people that based on personality traits and personal opinion about someone's personality, they've determined that Trump is the lesser of those two evils. So to them, it's of course you would pick the lesser of two evils. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, one would if that's what they thought was the lesser of two evils. But they come at it with this baseline assumption. And if you look at it on paper, I always say it, if I put their resumes on paper and swap their names, that's what you would think. Like you wouldn't know. And it's very frustrating that people don't realize that. They just, because they don't like Trump because he's a douche. But the thing is, and as if Joe is some really swell guy. So, but like, that's the problem is they're voting based on irrational thought, not based on facts.
Yeah. Well, let me back this up a step further. Okay. Because, you know, I have been talking with different people lately. I mean, I've been expanding my reach in a different area. I'm very heavily focused on guys like Jason Hickel and people who are MMTers, but who have a class analysis mixed in with this. And when you think about what the classes of this country are, we're a service-based economy. We don't produce shit anymore. Okay. And we do produce stuff. I don't want to be lie. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but we don't, not like what we could, not like what we should. And what we've got is a very, very transactional society based on service economy. Okay. There is no jobs out there for people that are getting these advanced degrees unless they went to an Ivy League school, unless they know someone. There, it just isn't that way. You don't get to work your way up from the mailroom anymore. I started at Bell Atlantic CMP Telephone Company in 1993. I ended up getting laid off July 24th, 2009. But in that time period, I went from being a service rep, answering the phone, saying, "Thank you for calling CMP Telephone Company. Steve Grumbine. How can I help you today?" From there to being a technician in the field, from being a technician in the field to being a cable splicer, from being a cable splicer, special services, from special services to service manager, from service manager to systems engineer, from systems engineer to senior systems engineer to senior program manager to associate director. And this is how it used to be. You don't have that anymore. It just doesn't work that way. You're lucky if you're stuck in a job for 5 years before they lay you off or you jump somewhere else.
They don't offer full time.
No.
That's the other thing. Everybody is a contract worker. Everybody is, and even what we're seeing with UPS in the discrepancy in how they're treating the people that came on later that didn't have like grandfathered in with any sort of like real security. Those people have been screwed. And that's one of the ways they keep us divided is they tell the people that have the security, look, you know, this is a good deal for you. And hopefully they stand strong for each other. But it's the same thing. You can now have this whole class of people that are not going to get anywhere near the same opportunities. And yet they're paying a lot more for their supposed education.
That's right.
This gets back to why these conversations are so very important, because the one thing that we have noticed over the last 5 to 7 years when this thing really started to take off is that there's not a lot of things that keep people on the left actively coalescing together, but labor is getting there. Workers who are concerned about their ability to make a living, healthcare, long-term prospects, things of that nature, are bringing people together, however slowly it may be. It's too slow for my liking, but there's at least something tangible there that people can sink their teeth into. I think we've come to a point now, especially with people that there's a great video that More Perfect Union put out the other day. We're going to have this, we're trying to get this gentleman to come on to show what it was like being at a Trump rally and just talking to people instead of being these dickheads that go to the Trump rallies, with all due respect, to try to find the lowest common denominator to say the stupidest thing that they could possibly find out of all the people they talk to. Whereas instead, what he decided to do was get into an economic conversation with these guys. And what you found is that overwhelmingly, most of them kind of get it. And they're very close to where we are. They may not see the solutions exactly the same, but what we did discover is that they know that the system is screwing working people. And that from their perspective, yes, having a living wage, having healthcare, those things all make sense to them. They may have a different philosophy in terms of their irrational fear of government, but the fact is, the government is supposed to work for us, not the other way around. And so once people recognize that, I really do think that there is cause for cautious optimism, as I say, but I would obviously love to hear your thoughts on that and what you say.
Yeah, I've got no optimism through the electoral process. I've got no optimism through the system as it stands. I outright reject electoral politics 100%. I no longer have any belief whatsoever, not because I don't believe in democracy and not because I don't believe in elections, but because I don't believe in the elections we hold in this country. I don't believe that you can run. It makes me throw up in my mouth a little when I think of people running a primary in the Democratic Party when they know full well, okay, that the DNC literally ran to federal court and fought tooth and nail that they're a private corporation, that they have no responsibility whatsoever to not only make donations go to the candidate you donated to, but to even ensure that they have any chance of a primary. If they want, they can hand select whoever. It's merely for their intent to see how would people vote. And it's like, oh my God, well, we're still going to pick Joe Biden, even though everybody wanted Bernie, but we got to figure out why. Well, they want somebody that's going to give them a better life. And this whole bullshit of, senile Joe, okay, smoking Joe sitting there running around in his own little fantasy land in between his ears. I mean, he was in the basement for how long? Nobody had seen hide nor hair of him. I just think to myself, if we're ever going to see the kind of change we want to see, we must absolutely stop behaving like very, very small children, take the kiddie books off the shelf and start diving into some theory and start recognizing that we are literally in a placebo system that allows us to believe we're really being very serious.
Right.
I'm a Justice Democrat. I'm a whatever. Oh my God, listen to what Bobby Reich said. He's so great. And all this very, very childlike kind of cherubic feelings. Let's go door knock for AOC. She's the best. She'll make a great president. Based on what? Based on her saying Mama Bear? Based on her capitulating? Based on what exactly do you feel makes her that? And not to mention, why would you believe you have the ability to vote for her, much less get her elected? The evidence is that they will select who the hell they want to select. You'll go through your performative voting and you'll feel really good about it. You'll put the little sticker on your forehead and take selfies. I voted. You'll do all that good stuff. And I'm not here telling you that voting's not good. I'm here to tell you that this system has got not only both parties literally hold up who's going to get to the debate stage. I got to bring Addie Barkin up every chance I can. Dude was literally celebrating the fact that the Green Party wasn't getting on any of these Democrat contested states.
And this is a person suffering from ALS,
yes,
which is just amazing.
This is a guy who I wouldn't piss on his head to put out a fire based on that. Okay. But I realized in that moment that all the stuff that we have been getting worked up on, all the stuff that we have been getting excited about, every 2 years we got this election cycle, then every 4 years we got this election cycle, and we break it all down, we build it back up, we do it again, we hurry, we donate $27 over and over and over again, we get all excited, we door knock, we show up, we swoon, oh, we love you, Bernie, we love you, whoever, and then like a fart in the wind, it's gone. Why? Because it was intended to suck you back in, make you believe, stop you from organizing beyond the duopoly. These guys don't let people up on the debate stage. They don't let them onto the ballot. Okay. And then if that's not bad enough, even if you thought you had a choice between Trump and Biden, you've had the Supreme Court put its thumb on the thing. There is so many stopgaps, so many, what's that word, man? It's like, they're like protections for the establishment, protections for the system to ensure safeguards. There you go. To ensure that the bourgeois candidate, the candidate that is absolutely representative of the ownership class, gets in. And they both support the ownership class. None of them support we the people. Joe Biden gives you the folks, well, we're going to make an economy that's great for everybody, right? And what does he do? He fattens it up for Wall Street. He does the exact same thing that Ronald Reagan did. Now, if you're old enough to remember the Reagan time, you remember a lot of people did do well. A lot of people did do well, but a lot of people were left out in horrible conditions. And it's this same exact scenario where the investor grade shit fucks survive and thrive. And then they sit there and say, what are you little people just bitching about? Why are you upset?
They like to be unhappy. They like to be
unhappy, don't you? You know? And so as I think to myself, what is it going to take? Right? You know, it's not good enough to be a union. Unions are one thing, but it's not good enough. You must have class struggle unions. Joe Burns wrote a great book, and I beg you, it's about that thick. It's super thin book. And it's called Class Struggle Unionism. And it talks about not capitulating to these, not letting Democrats think that they're yours, not voting for them, withholding your vote even, not voting for someone, period. Not, who do you want, Trump? No, I'm choosing not to fucking vote for you or whatever. But the idea of having us working collaboratively, you know, there's this, I had an interview a few months back with a guy named Rowan Gray, who I think we've had on here. If we haven't, I had him on Status Quo. Either way, Rowan has been on Macro and Cheese many times. And what he told me, we were talking frankly, and it was one of those moments that really I've held on to. He said, you know, Steve, he goes, during the deficit myth, we all were one fist. We all understood how to win the deficit conversation. However, when it came to inflation, we all knew the answer, but we didn't have one solid fist to punch with. So we ended up getting picked apart by the carrion vipers, these freaking crows and vultures coming down. Oh, they just want to print money. Oh, they just, all these stupid, worthless statements so stupid and pathetic and subhuman that when you look at them, you're like, who the fuck would say printing money to begin with? And who the fuck would sit there and say that's what causes inflation? Show me the mechanism. Show me the fucking mechanism when you print money that creates inflation. I got all the time in the world. Show me how that created inflation. Oh, you mean some rich fuck decided they want to go ahead and make a few more bucks because they looked at their price point and their profit margin and their ROI targets and said, haha, there's more slush out there. We got to get our piece of that pie. And they raise prices. It's a simple thing. People get all, oh, they printed money, inflation, print money, inflation. And you just want to crack them, just stop saying stupid.
So what's this quick response when someone says, because those are always the questions, either inflation and then like debt deficit conversation.
So you tell them this, let's go with inflation. Say, okay, what is inflation? What happened? What are we talking? No, you are the one making the claim. Define me what you just saw. Well, they print. No. Don't say something stupid because I'm here to eviscerate you. Say something smart. Tell me what you think caused that inflation. Because I've got my Wolverine ready. What is it you think caused it? So shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm serious because people are dying because of these lies that allow Joe Biden to celebrate 1.7 trillion in deficit reduction because he's saving us from inflation. Okay. And this is what we got to do. We got to be the responsible ones in the room. We got to cut spending. Oh my God. So what you have to do is you have to find out what they're talking about. So when we had supply chain issues, right? Supply chains are down. They're broken. Things are fucked up. What do you do to fix a supply chain issue? I don't know. You fix the supply chain. You get the shipping lanes done. You fix the ports. You fix the roadways. You make sure that you're able to source it from an alternate source that you have access to. Supply chain fixed, prices come down. If they don't come down, why not? Are you gouging? If you are, I will come after you. But unless you're a neoliberal, then you'll say, oh, the market has spoken, right? Oh, the markets, we can't do it. That's the free market. That's one. That's supply chains. The next one, hey, how come there's no toilet paper on the shelves? Well, it could be part supply chain. It could also be that the workers didn't want to come to work because they didn't want to get COVID or whatever other reason. So all of a sudden they can't produce enough of it. So you've got a supply shortage. So what is the answer to a supply shortage? We increase supply. How do we do that? Well, you don't want to increase supply? Fine. We'll hire someone else. We'll find another company. We'll create competition. We'll do whatever. We'll get you some toilet paper. That's how you fix a toilet paper shortage. That's how you fix supply issues. However, if for some reason you tell me that the government, when it's buying something through an RFP process, decides it's going to pay, instead it paid $10 for a thing last year, this year it decides it's going to pay $15. Well, it has just created a new price anchor, a new price bottom. It set the price by paying $15. So guess what? Now you can have an inflation issue there. Okay. Once you get full employment, once you have full resources to thoroughly utilized, okay, now you're dealing with scarcity. Scarcity is another way of creating inflation. I talked about this. People laughed at me because they didn't like the analogy, but it works for me because I know I watch idiots rush to Best Buy at 3:00 in the morning on Christmas Eve, trying to buy the new system, whatever that system is. And what happens? They purposely underproduce because they're trying to gin up excitement. So what they do is they'll create 2,000 PlayStations or whatever. They'll set them out there and everybody, 10, 15 people get them. And then everybody else goes home wishing they got them. So what happens? You got a black market now charging $1,000 a box. And you've got them saying, well, let's wait another 6 months to see the take rate and see if people keep getting excited. And sure enough, the excitement goes up and they extend out the price hike for another year. That's another way. But these aren't inflations. These are what we call relative value stories. Okay. The reality is that people like Isabella Weber, who is an economist who focused on what we're calling greedflation, but it's really a lot of very technical terms like profit maximization. Okay. These are things that they determined are the driving force for inflation. Okay. So in my mind, what I would say is, bottom line is, I don't know, which inflation are you trying to solve? Which price went up that you're concerned with? Let's take a look at that specific thing. Inflation is the persistent rise in all prices, okay? So what happens if you increase interest rates on credit, but you stop spending into the economy, okay? People have less disposable income. People suddenly have to borrow money. They have to go in debt. They have to get credit cards at 35.99%. Now, all of a sudden, that thing that costs $1 no longer costs $1, it costs $1.35.99. Okay. So what you're dealing with is inflation via this credit hike. So these are all issues that can be addressed, but it has nothing to do with printing money. If you want to call an opportunist that says, hey, the poor people seem like they have a few more bucks than we want them to have, let's suck it out of them, I wouldn't call that inflation. I'd call that a crime. And I would go after the people seeking that profit maximization, and I would put them in jail. And depending if it's for pharmaceuticals or anything like that, I might put them to death. I mean, the impact of someone literally starving people out of medicine for diabetes and insulin, things like that. You know what? If you want to talk about the death penalty, which I'm staunchly against, I might make an exception in that case. You know what I mean?
That's what I say about the pharma execs in terms of my thoughts on for-profit prisons. Like, I'm okay with for-profit prisons if they're full of the right people. So like, then I'm kind of thinking, and if they're, I would do like, obviously an employee-owned profit prison. So like the employees would able to be profiting off of the scumbags that are in there. But like I was just talking today with my son about the Sackler family and how infuriating it is that they're not going to be criminally charged.
Yeah, it's insane.
Just like Sam Bankman-Fried, he will not be criminally charged, no matter what anybody thinks, and they'll all continue to be distracted. And at one point, I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying. You know, a great example of that, as you were alluding to, is whether it was in the early 90s when it was Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and then over time it ultimately manifested into PlayStation and Xbox. And
I had an Atari.
Well, you're very old, so.
I had a Telesystems 2200 or whatever, the old Sears, the wood grain.
But you spoke in very prophetically that I think more people even are, you know, we have conservatives, we have commies, we got every type of political person in the chat, tepid social democrat, they're all there. And the one thing I think people can universally understand is this. There is something to be said for the worst element of capitalism, which is price gouging, vulturism, the ability to scare the bejesus out of everybody, that the fear of missing out, or you're never going to get this. What is the justification behind charging $500 today for PlayStation and 6 months from now charging $150 for the PlayStation? It's this mentality of you're not going to get it, but you will eventually, because everything is about supply and demand. The people that are in control, because of the fact that we have no guardrails, because labor has been absolutely destroyed from the very top, from Reagan all the way to Biden. And Biden had a very big hand in this, not just as president, but also in the Senate. He is one of the very worst, and there are people who are in total denial of that because of their Trump derangement. But that's also because the system is broken. We look at this now and we think, how does anybody justify charging $300 for, or even a better example is the Taylor Swift concerts now, which I'm hearing $2,000 a ticket. And I'm thinking, okay, I understand that people's lives are maybe not so fulfilling, and they feel that going to a Taylor Swift concert is a way to enjoy themselves. But if you've become so broken by the system that you literally will give up, let's say, 2 months worth of living just so you have a few hours of bliss. I mean, listen, I don't know Taylor Swift from a hole in the wall, but if she really had a problem with people spending $2,000 a ticket, she could easily change that like that and say, I'm not going to perform if you're going to continue to price gouge.
Yep.
They're all effing in it together. And the idea that you're so blind that you can't see that even if you find her entertaining, that she is just as much guilty as anybody else. She's not stupid. She knows that this is going on. This is like anything. The people who claim that they care so very, very much about how bad working people have it in this country, if you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, then as you said before, shut the F up, or even worse, we're going to come for you. This is like, it's like people really don't follow history. It's like they do not learn that history will always repeat itself. And we're entering that phase of the system that is being completely broken down at this point, where people are getting ready to get violent. Like if you don't recognize that we're that close to people taking up arms, I don't know where you're looking now, because people are so desperate. And like you said, we're only 6 weeks away from the level of desperation that could really get out of control.
Yeah. I want you to think about something like, so rather than just be aimless and going with whatever, is the current trend, to me, having a class analysis and having a destination that I understand that I want to work toward allows me to be centered. Okay. Allows me to evaluate versus join. I'm not a joiner. I know where I want to be. I know what I'm fighting for. And within that space, I was talking earlier to people on my team, and I was talking to them about before Google Maps took over everything. When you would say, hey, I want to go to Hershey Park, and you pull it up and it'd say, if you're coming from 83, here's the pathway. If you're coming from 495, here's the pathway. If you're coming from Route 70, here's the pathway. If you're coming from the airport, here's the pathway. So all these different ways of getting, they're going to the same spot, that one destination. So you could transpose that to the way we think as people. If you're a Republican, here's how we get you to center. We got to be able to address those concerns and get you here. If you're a libertarian, here's the ideas that you've been thinking about, but here's where it's right. Here's how we get you right here. You got to be able to pull them in instead of that one size fits all kind of mindset, right? It's still one size fits all at the end, because I'm not equivocating on freedom, and I'm not equivocating on making sure universal basic needs are taken care of for every single person, period. However, you know, in that conversation, and I was referencing this a little bit ago with about Jason Hickel. I don't know if you remember, that was a few, probably 20 minutes ago. I brought it up and kind of like a hanging Chad moved on. But Jason Hickel is a neat guy. He's about something called degrowth. Okay. And people don't understand what that is. They don't understand that term. It doesn't mean anything to them. They just think that it means, oh, you're going to crash the market. Oh, you're going to make us all paupers. You're going to put us in burlap bags, or whatever thing that people say to fearmonger people from making the world a better place. And speaking with him, it's quite clear that there is a groundswell of people that not only understand the climate is on fire, understand the inequality baked into the system, not just within our country, but in the world, the global South, etc. You know, so much of what's going on in Ukraine right now, despite all the alt media versions of this stuff, is a direct result of the predation of the global North on the global South for resource extraction. If you know Ukraine has been the breadbasket of Europe for a very, very long time. Russia highly depends on Ukraine. And they also depend on Ukraine for access to ports, all kinds of stuff. So with this bullshit that the United States does, it has exported this kind of predatory colonialism that the rest of Europe plays in. You know, for example, in Africa, many countries use what they call the CRA franc. Okay. They're colonial nations using French currency because they don't have their own. And you look and you watch and you understand what's happening. If you could put that together and think about that from a class perspective, the world's working class, the world's poor, the world's labor, okay, come together as one fight, one fist, okay? These are things that we can latch on to. And if you understand what we've been doing, I mean, you know, some of the confessions of an economic hitman were a little flamboyant and a little off, but it was still a great book. It still really put you on to some really important truths. And you start understanding it's not about making money. See, these rich don't need money. It's not about money. It's all about access to power, access to real resources. And when you understand it's all about extraction, you understand that the reason why the U.S. is creating somewhat of a Cold War with China is because we've allowed our infrastructure to go belly up. We haven't taken care of ourselves. We haven't done the things we need. We've been too busy mining empire around the world. Okay. So all of this plays into a different analysis, a different perspective. Instead of worrying about Joe Biden, he sucks, he's horrible, but he's part of a corrupt system that perpetuates itself. The next person that comes up is going to be just as bad, if not worse. And it's going to be the most important election you've ever experienced in your life, bar none. There's no election more important than this one. And you're going to have people that think they're being
every election.
Yeah, that's right. These people are going to be super, super earnest, and they're going to look at you like a small child asking you if you've received your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, with the doe eyes. So please vote for Joe. Please vote for whoever. You don't want Trump, do you? And it's going to happen all over again. We need to pull away from that. We need to understand, sit them down on our lap like a child and explain to them what we're up against. Explain to them for real the plight. These things that we're dealing with are not going to be voted away, no matter how enticing the election is, no matter how passionate some, Justice Democrat who's running around and sitting in a lot of Zoom meetings, really being very serious. They don't recognize the structural impairments within the system built to make them feel like they're contributing something, all the while not doing a damn thing. It's just kept them out of the real fight, which is this organization around the world, this global fight against climate crisis, against unemployment, against inequality, against resource extraction. we've got so much going on right now, a polycrisis, as they say, that for us to just get locked into electoralism, to focus on these neo-maxis and dweebies and act like they're somehow or another going to solve these problems because, oh my God, Trump, we have really, really got to step back. Those of us who have the brain, who have knowledge, who understand, have to step back and say, how do we bring these people together? And it can't be within the party, because the party is built to suffocate a movement. The party is built to choke an activist. It's built to crush the working class. All the while smiling like, have you voted for Joe Biden? Can we count on your support? Which is really important.
It's like a cult.
Yeah.
It's a cult.
Yeah.
And I've known for a long time, I've seen the man behind the curtain, that it's all just kind of theater and silliness. Like, I totally know this. And it's really difficult sometimes to have conversations with people that are still drinking the Kool-Aid. I feel like, we're looking at two completely different universes. When people are talking about this and they're so freaked out and they don't understand why I'm not so worried about it being Trump. And I'm in my head thinking, tomato, it doesn't matter. And I also, again, I've said a million times, I don't care what language my oligarchs speak. I don't care if they're Russian. I don't care if they're Chinese. Those people are all on the same team. Ultimately, it's a class war. And people just are not understanding that, because I think it's honestly, it's too big. Like their people's brains cannot wrap around that. It is a lot easier to focus on your country, your electoral process, got to get out and vote, because it's the big picture is really scary.
The one thing I will say about RFK is the fact that he has come out and said unequivocally that my uncle and my father were assassinated by the CIA. They're above everything else that he has said. That is too much for, even today, a significant portion, especially of the electorate,
they cannot
hear it.
Well, you've seen them doubling down. I've seen people like our congresswoman flat out saying, I trust the FBI. I trust the CIA. Like, these people are doubling down.
This is
They're
become
groomers.
They are. You're right. That's groomers.
That's groomers. They are groomers.
You've seen,
not drag queens.
You've seen They Live.
That's right. What's that?
You saw They Live, correct?
Who? I can't hear that part. I'm missing it.
The movie They Live. I think that's what you're saying.
Oh, yes. Where's my glasses? Yeah.
Yes. Even if you don't watch anything else in that movie, just watch the 5-minute segment where he's at the magazine stand and he puts on the glasses and he sees everything. And it's as relevant then as it is now.
That literally happened to me in law school, actually. The putting on the glasses and all of a sudden realizing that I had
obey, consume, reproduce. This is Debbie, of course, this is why it's good that Wasserman Schultz is doing this, because you couldn't pick a more repulsive type of person to basically say, whatever she's selling, I'm going to believe the opposite.
She flat out said, I trust the intelligence. I trust the FBI. And you go with that.
And the one thing that I know you're the ultimate pessimist, but I will tell you that I do think that the slight cause of optimism now, more so than ever has been in recent years, maybe in a very, very long time. A lot of people, if you just observe, everything is a vacuum when it comes to what you see on social media, because it's a very small microcosm of the whole world. But what I do believe is that the consistency of the message is somewhat reflective of where people are at. And what I do believe is that the message you're seeing today is a message of, I'm not buying the bullshit you're selling me anymore. I don't buy it anymore. I know that you think that everything is really bad, but it's really bad because you've made it bad. And whatever you're selling, I'm not buying it anymore. I'm going to look in another direction. That's why I believe if Cornel West gets his act together, just the thought of somebody other than the two-party system is running for office, regardless of whether you're a proponent for electoral politics, him alone is just going to cause enough of a stir where they're not going to know what to do. And the only thing they know how to do is to censor and silence and push you away, because they have nothing to offer you, because people now have been able to see behind the curtain.
Well, people who want to. There's this whole
Yeah.
group of willfully ignorant people. I've come to the conclusion, that was something I was just thinking about recently. I look at people like my congressperson or any of these Jews, particularly in the House of Representatives, that refuse to recognize what is really going on in Israel. They are one of two things. They are either willfully ignorant or they're lying. And there is no other option. These are people that have access to information.
Well,
right?
that's the reason.
So there's no, if you have access to information, you either purposefully not looking at that information, or you know it and you're lying. So you're either willfully ignorant or lying. And I feel like that with them on most everything at this point.
And this is why you in particular have that righteous anger that we should all have, because I'm a believer that they're all full of shit. If you are one of the 535 most powerful elected representatives in the world, you are privy to information that no one else is, much like who is getting killed, who is, going to be getting this sweetheart deal, who's going to jail, who's not, how do we convince people to continue to buy our charade? So when they go out there and they make their statements, and their statement is patently false, it's because they're deliberately lying. That old joke. How do you know a politician's lying? Their lips are
Well,
moving.
I really have to believe that about all of. I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how there are people like my congresswoman, other people that are not. And Hakeem Jeffries with his big, oh, we're going to Israel. I love Israel. Please, AIPAC, let me suck your butt. And he is just, and they're going on their delegation and they're doing things, and they know the truth. These people know the truth. So they are purposefully lying about what is going on there.
Do you remember the movie Total Recall? Do you remember when Arnold, right?
Yes.
Do you remember everybody was in on the lie? Everybody was in on the lie. Arnold, didn't even realize he was part of the lie. Okay. That right there is about as close to reality as we get. And those people that are in those positions have been given a lot of information. They know they're lying. I believe they know they're lying. I believe that they have been told what to do within these closed door sessions with people we've probably never seen before.
Oh yeah.
I believe
never will.
I believe 100%, okay, that in the end we are watching people, because think about this. Think about the sheer, you'd have better odds of winning that $1.5 billion lottery, okay, than 535 people rotating constantly, being completely and utterly feckless to get healthcare through, or completely and utterly feckless in getting student debt eradicated, or being completely and utterly feckless in dealing with the climate crisis. There's no possible way that could happen this way consistently. It's not money in politics. At the end of the day, this is the way it is, period. The system itself is structured to only allow those through the door that are going to be whatever they've groomed them to be. And, if you try and let somebody through the door that somehow or another isn't, corrupt or whatever, it won't take long for them to either be silenced or completely absorbed into the Borg,
There's a third option. I think there's a third option.
Tell me this third option.
Ineffective, but loud. And I got to tell you, because I look at what, we don't get anything done. They're not getting anything done in there. Nobody's going to
nothing.
No. However, squeaky wheel gets the grease. So we spend our time looking at morons like Marjorie Taylor Greene standing up and whatever spewing comes out of her mouth. And it's like, imagine if there were, I don't know, some people in Congress that were actually saying the right things. It can happen. Now, will they be effective policy-wise? No. But could they possibly help? Just like I feel about Cornel West's campaign. Do I think that it's going to make a difference at the end of the day as far as electoral politics? No. But does it help propel a movement? Does it help bring awareness to something? Yeah, maybe it does. So, I don't know that it's like an all or nothing win or lose thing. I think that there's growth that can happen along the way within the movement in different places, depending on who the messenger is.
You know, I'm going to tell you, I believe that the only value we get from this stuff is the opportunity to educate and communicate and network. That's literally the only value that comes from this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's important to use these times to develop power outside of the electoral process, outside of the duopoly, because everybody thinks I'm just full of shit. I mean, even some of my most favorite donors and supporters and everything else still cycle back with nonsense. I'm telling you right now, if we don't build power outside of that, it will get co-opted and just completely suffocated, drowned in bullshit. Every single thing, every movement that we have witnessed has been co-opted and crushed by the duopoly. And I think calling it a duopoly is almost misleading.
Because it isn't. It's a monopoly.
It's a monopoly. It is literally it's like community theater. It's up there literally to make us feel like there's this, they're really working on it, man. They're sitting there staying up all night long.
It's false sense of democracy is what it is. It's a false sense of democracy that we clearly do not have. And this is something that I have been a proponent about regarding, even if you are involved in electoral politics and for people that run, is the concept of running service-based campaigns. And if it were up to me, and I did reach out to somebody regarding Cornel West and them doing a national service-based campaign, because what you are doing is, and I learned this firsthand, like very, very clearly, that when you run a service-based campaign, people will get involved that aren't normally political people. And I was able to get people involved in our campaign and doing work with us that never participated in politics before because we were doing service. And what happens is if you do that, then your movement, your that outside organization, even though, yeah, it's part of this campaign right now, when that campaign is over, it still has potential to continue bringing people in. That's what I'm trying to shift this paradigm to service-based campaigns that continue whether or not somebody wins that race. It needs to continue. Bring in the outside.
Yes.
That's the key. If you watch the sine wave of elections and you just watch how it goes, you need that consistent, and it needs to be actually ramping up. You need it to be growing, but you need it consistent through the campaigns, through any political malaise, through anything else that's going on. It's got to keep steady. And this is why it cannot be in the party. The party is only worried about keeping us engaged in their election process. They're only there to keep us engaged in the narratives they tell. And they expect us to be carriers of that fake message to anywhere, all corners of the earth. I mean, look how many fools out there don't know shit about Ukraine, but every fucking profile picture has a goddamn yellow and blue flag on it. And this is not to denigrate Ukraine. I'm sure the people there have their own feelings about it.
You know that if you show me a Ukraine flag, I can tell you exactly who lives in that house, almost to exactly what they might even look like in the car that they drive. And it is a very specific kind of person. And we all know who that is.
The problem with those particular individuals are the same people.
Subaru.
And are very much.
Hey, stop saying that. I like Subaru.
I do too. I'm just joking.
But the people who, and it is stereotypical, but I will say that universally, the people who have the Ukraine flag in their profile, they have it on in their backyard, wherever it may be. There's two rules of thumb that a number of people, especially on the political right, are not wrong about, is that they will have a Ukraine flag. They're not going to have an American flag. So I think that that's one thing. And then the other thing, of course, is that we're dealing.
They also have the Black Lives Matter flags. Same people. What they also, you will not see from them, is they are the last people on earth that would ever pick up a weapon to defend this country or defend especially somebody else's country. The second they call for your kid to go over there and fight in Ukraine on the Russian front, let's see how many of them are keeping that flag in their profile. It's very easy to wax poetic about a war where hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have been killed, tortured, maimed, put into slavery. Don't even get me started on what's coming with BlackRock and what they're doing over there, because BlackRock basically is the conduit that brings everything together between Lockheed Martin, between Northrop Grumman, Boeing, all of these multinational megaopoly billion, if not trillion-dollar organizations. This is all about money and power. There is nothing else. And to the ignorant people that are out there that still think
that if I just wave my Ukrainian flag and show how great a supporter I am of this, that this is somehow going to help.
No, vote
it's
blue.
not.
Vote
All
blue.
that it matters to them is their insecurities as people.
Look, I'm going to pull this back for just a second. I want to be crystal clear here, because this is hard for me too. What I'm about to say is very hard for me to remember, but I do know it to be true. Okay. Those folks that have the Ukraine flags and stuff, they're just as propagandized and dumbed down as everybody else. And they're part of that whole apparatus of, hey, I'm a Justice Democrat and I'm voting for Summer. You know, they have that whole thing. They're going through that same process. They've been propagandized, and they want so badly to believe in the system and to belong in whatever fashion. And this is their way of creating their own safe place that, hey, I'm in line with everybody else and I don't have to deviate. And it's a safety thing. It's a community thing. You know, it's like, hey, I'm part of this thing. And there's an element of that I think we all want. We all want to have those relationships. We all want to believe that we're on the right side of stuff. And this is why you see so much hatred going on with the COVID crap. I mean, I just don't even want to get into it. It's just so awful. But the reality is that it's all about divide and conquer.
Yeah.
And it has been used to great, execution. It has been used to great detriment for us as well. But it's hard to not punch down at people when they're idiots, when they've been swept up in the sauce, and they're part of the machine that's keeping you down because they bought into the establishment bullshit.
Turn off MSNBC, people. Turn that off.
It just bounces off their head. So it's not, I am really trying desperately to unplug from that punching of those fools and recognizing that the people that are doing this, it doesn't do me any good to get them to not use a Ukraine flag. It doesn't do any good to get them to do X, Y, Z, because in reality, what we need is them to understand and embrace that they are part of the working class. If we can get people to realize that they are part of the working class and we have common interests, okay, whether you're black, you're white, you're gay, you're straight, whatever, we all have a common class interest. Okay. It doesn't satisfy everything because there's a lot of intersectionality there that has to be addressed, and it's not identity politics in the wrong way. It's not woke and the freaking loser.
No, it's just real
way. It's real shit every day. And we've got to account for that. And this whole anti-woke bullshit, you know, I got to tell you something. When I learned about what the term woke was, I was talking with a great scholar named Devarian Baldwin, who wrote a book called The Ivory Tower. It talks about universities and how universities have taken over entire communities. But anyway, he and I really talked at a great depth about this term woke. And I realized that this was kind of code for black people in general that understood the system, but just they kept their head down. They do what they had to do up here, but behind the scenes, they knew. Yeah. And it was all about anti-gentrification. They saw these things. They knew these things. Anti-poverty. They knew these things. It was, you could look at Fred Hampton and think Fred Hampton was truly woke in the most woke fashion possible, right? And so when you think about woke and how they've turned it and perverted it and turned us all into hating gays, hating lesbians, hating trans people, getting sideswiped about which bathroom people use, whatever, on and on, ridiculous shit. It's all part and parcel with an approach that wants us to be individuals, not a collective. It wants us to focus hyper on how stupid they are versus how great we are. And it creates these divisions that are they just too much to overcome if you're dealing with normie minded approaches to problem solving. This is why it's so important, in my opinion, to have a class analysis and to really truly do your reading, learn from the struggle of socialists of the past. So let's quickly hit that word too real quick. Socialism is really about workers. It's really about a balance of power. It's really about ownership of labor. Do you want to be owned by massa, or do you want to be the owner of your own labor? Do you want to be connected to the products that you create? Do you want to be able to have your own agency for what you do? And I can't imagine a single soul being against that. They get bugged out when they hear the word socialism.
They don't understand. That's
They don't
purposeful.
understand.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
to me, it's hyper important to understand what class analysis is. I'm not here, and I hope no one is, by the way, here to recreate what they did when they left Tsarist Russia. The Bolsheviks had their time, their material conditions, their historical moment. We're not going to have that. We don't have factory floors like that anymore. We don't have the kind of places where there's these union halls the way they did there, where the people would go together and talk, and we don't have that. We just don't have. We don't even have the beatnik cafes anymore where people are reading Jack Kerouac and stuff like that. We don't have any of the things that we did. In fact, going back to what we started the show with mushrooms and LSD, I want you to think about something, and you can do with this what you want. But people were ready to take on a system when their minds had been freed and they had had those psilocybin moments, when they had gone through different experiences that allowed them to unite together, not necessarily in working class struggle, but in anti-establishment. That's not the same thing as what I'm advocating for. But if you notice, right then, right there, the CIA and everybody else came down and said, oh my God, we got to get rid of this LSD thing that we put out there. Now we got to pull it back. And so all of a sudden it became the greatest evil in mankind. But what had happened? People had checked out. They dropped out. They understood. They tuned in. They understood a different reality. They had seen the world through a different lens. Once you took that away, people were now programmable. People lost that extra dimension that they were able to operate under. And if you've ever tripped, I'm not saying every trip's a wonderful experience, and I'm not here advocating for, whatever. I'm just simply stating that at a macro level, yes, at a macro level, though, people as a whole were having a different experience, and they were saying, I'm not having it. I want something different. And I think that, lo and behold, that I think a lot of our hope and our future is going to come through psychedelics, through people reawakening the imagination and remembering our connection to the earth and to the universe and to each other. I mean, when you understand mycelium and the way mycelium grows beneath the soil and connects, and it's a communication network through not only the different types of fungi growing, the different fruits and so forth, but everything. I mean, like, there's so much going on there. Whenever you have death that lays down on the ground, the mycelium beneath the surface know death has occurred, and the right type of mushrooms will grow up. The right type of fungus will grow up and decompose that stuff. The wood, there's wood lovers, there's poop lovers, there's all kind of dung lovers, whatever you want to call it. The point is that we live in a world that we've been alienated from. And as a result of being alienated from it, we have lost the ability to think beyond those very, very narrow choices that they've allowed us to believe are the realm of choices. So, for me, I guess if you want to take this as like kind of a parting shot, I am really, really huge advocate for a full-blown, legalization of psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, every, DMT, all of the different.
Have you read Drug Use for Grown-Ups by Dr. Carl Hart?
Not yet, but I'm going to. It sounds like
I'm
going
I'm just saying. Well, he was a guest. We had him on the show. He is a neuropsychopharmacology professor at Columbia, and he is an advocate for decriminalization of all drugs, a la Portugal, and that adults can make up their own minds, and it has a better chance of being better products, and you don't have people that are whatever. It's what you would probably agree with, is my point. But and I am very thankful for the amount of trips I've taken and things that I did when I was in college, because I do understand what you're saying. And I do think that there is this.
Hey, can you put Metalopoly up here? Can you put Metalopoly? Let's talk about this real quick.
I've been trying to avoid this all night, Steve.
Nah,
but it's
put it up there. So first of all, I don't drink. I am a teetotaler. I have not had a drink since September 15th, 2006. I am not anti-religious. I got into recovery. I learned, but I'm not. I'm a spiritual guy. I believe in spirituality. I don't hate all religion. I what I do hate though is when people say, listen to this guy. When I see somebody say something like that, I look at guys like Metalopoly and I think to myself, the world doesn't need more people like that. They don't know anything about me. They don't know shit about me, but yet they had something stupid to say because their life is simply unfulfilling. Okay. In reality, if you think about what this guy is saying, listen to this guy. I bet he hates religion, but he's talking like an LSD cult leader. LSD cult leader?
I've never met one.
What kind of worthless fuck says something like that? Really?
Well, Metalopoly is a friend of the show, but
Metalopoly is he's not a friend of Grumbine.
The problem, of course, is that what he doesn't realize, and I don't have any issue with somebody who has faith, but the fact of the matter is there is so much more cultism in religion than there ever is in recreational drug use. And I've never used recreational drugs.
I can attest to that.
I was baptized, just so we're all on the same page. I was baptized in 1993. Okay. I had grown up in a family that was not religious, but was very conservative. And I went ahead and got sober June 13th, 1993. And I went to church. My AA sponsor at the time was a guy named Father Lou, rest his soul. Another guy that was my sponsor was a guy named Joe, who died taking a newcomer home from a meeting, got hit by a drunk driver. My grand sponsor had 34 years sobriety, hung himself in a jail cell after he went back out drinking. I've been around this stuff. I was around people that were laying in a bed with a freaking needle from heroin, blue, dead.
None of these are
the father crying over him.
None of them are mushroom users or marijuana users.
Not a bit of what we're talking about here has nothing to do with cults or anything else like that.
Right.
And for somebody to say something so worthless,
they don't know.
Well, but they said something. If they didn't know, they should have shut their fucking mouth, right? I mean, seriously, right?
Well, this is true. This is true. And I think people don't know about drug usage.
That's right. So they need to do some reading. They need to read.
And I myself have I mean, I went to Boulder. You know, it was sort of like, it was almost like a requirement in my dorm. Like when I was a freshman, it was something like 30% of the kids in my school were doing ecstasy fairly regularly. So like, and this was when it was actually like MDMA, actual proper product. Which that's another thing about when you legalize is you get proper product as opposed to all other sorts of whatever other crap, people like fentanyl and stuff, people mixing crap in, just like that's how it goes awry.
And I also think that the more people hear these types of things, that it becomes infinitely more important to recognizing that so much of what we have been sold for so very long is because the system itself is exploitative. And the goal of the system and the reason why particularly, I credit a lot of the people. Like I said, we are going to have this gentleman, John from More Perfect Union, come and talk about what it was like going to the Trump rally. What I do believe, and this is much more true of what you'll see on the Trump side of the GOP versus, let's say, going to a Mike Pence get together, or the people who would be going to, let's say, even a Ron DeSantis get together. These are people that likely have never tripped or smoked or done anything.
I can't imagine a more unfun party than a Mike Pence party. Honestly, I can't. I cannot think of anything more. I would rather have a root canal.
But my point is, you can see how there's different types of cultism that exist in our society. On the right side of politics, like you'll find in Pennsylvania, is that there's a church on every corner, especially in the rural communities outside of Harrisburg and University Park. That is what dominates the community, especially the Pennsylvania Dutch going back hundreds and hundreds.
You want to know the drug problem is the opioid problem that people are having who don't want to be having, the people that are stuck.
But then I'll take it one step further, and then you swing it in the other direction. And you have the overeducated liberal who truly believes that there is a professional managerial class that one has to essentially bow to the altar of, much like in the church, and do not ever question it. Ever. They know better than you. Listen to them. If Rachel Maddow says something, then you better believe she's telling the truth. And there is no difference. And I'm sure you know this. They've done psychological examinations of the way the brain functions in response to these types of statements and feelings. If you look at the way that they react to somebody like a Rachel Maddow versus somebody like a Billy Graham, the reaction is exactly the same in terms of the brain functionality. It is cult-like mindset. So when somebody speaks on that level, even though I'm not a partaker in psychedelics, there is no question that if you do not free your mind, then we will continue down this path to destruction. It is only when you accept the fact that, yes, we are economic slaves, and that is the way the system was designed. And every other system around the world, more or less, adheres to the same principles. When China and Russia, we're fighting with them, it's not about the philosophy. It's about the resources. Who's going to control this shit? And our attitude is we get to control everything. And as soon as you open your mind to that reality, you'll stop complaining about whether or not Trump or Biden is more corrupt. It's all corrupt, and that's not changing until working people unite. And when that happens, then things might actually change.
That's like when you ask me who's my favorite president, and I always say it's like choosing my favorite VD. Like there is, I guess I go with one that's not syphilis, like I go with something a little less deadly maybe, but really, we're really splitting hairs.
Yeah, when you look at what the system is that we're living in right now, okay, it breeds sadness. Am I locked up? Am I stuck? Am I frozen?
We hear you good, but yeah, you're
okay. But I look like I'm like having a total meltdown.
You look like Mitch McConnell doing.
I'm having a Mitch McConnell moment, huh? There we go. Oh my God! Did I free up yet? I'm gonna try and. I have this one thing.
See, he's going with this is as crazy as he'll get.
All right, so here's the deal. Okay, the system that we live in creates depression. Literally, it alienates us from happiness and joy and family, things that we should all be able to partake in. Happiness, right, etc. Fun, recreation, learning. Well, I mean, who in the world? I mean, regardless of what you think of gender studies, I don't even know what that means, right?
Gender studies?
No. I mean, I get it, but what I'm saying is, like, I don't know what that degree program looks like. But we're in a situation.
I apologize for that.
We're in a situation where people mock people for learning things, right?
I know that is,
and it's like,
isn't that crazy?
Who does that? What kind of split-fingered waste person does that, right?
People do that.
And so I think to myself, at the end of the day, we're all depressed in some way, shape, or form. We are all not at our best peak who we could be. No. We're not, and when I say best, I don't mean like we're more productive at work. I'm talking about we're not able to exact and enjoy life. We are constantly living in precarity.
Not free. That
we're
is
not free at all.
No.
This is a debt slavery. There's so many ways that they get you with fines, fees, penalties. And if they don't get you through that, there's a tail light missing and they'll get you that way. I mean, at the end of the day, we have a society that is controlled by police, controlled by capital. And there's an elite group of people that live above that don't have to deal with any of it. And that right there is the fight. That's the battle. And whether or not somebody calls that cult or weird shit or come up with some other stupid comment that ignores reality, I'm telling you right now, we are so far from who we were born to be, who we should be, who we could be as people, as a society, that it's no wonder that we have very low expectations. It's no wonder that we fall prey for just about anything that sounds remotely hopeful, because after all, life without hope isn't worth living.
We're very beaten down. We're very beaten down and defeatist.
From my favorite movie, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things. And sometimes that is all you have.
That's it.
And to give up
I just
hope.
it isn't for me. I don't necessarily have hope. I really don't. I honestly, for all I know, we're going down in a fiery dart asteroid that's going to hit the earth and it won't matter. And it doesn't matter.
Like an asteroid. It looks like an asteroid hit Maui.
I'm just saying, I don't have any hope, but yet I still care about the nature of the collective, and I care about it because it exists right now. So I don't need to like have any sort of, it doesn't necessarily matter to me what happens, you know, in 10 years. I care about what's happening right now in terms of how people are being treated. And so and how the earth is being treated. And those are things that we have to deal with regardless of, even like for me, I am fairly like with certain things like the environment, I don't have a whole lot of hope at this point. I really don't. I think a lot of it is too late. If people haven't read Bright Green Lies, highly recommend. And a lot of the so-called solutions really aren't. And nobody's really addressing that. It's one of those real facts, kind of like what you do, Steve, when you're like, if we don't address the economic stuff, we can't go anywhere. I feel the same way about the Bright Green Lies about the environment. Like, oh, we'll just put up wind turbines. We'll put up, you know, more solar panels. We'll just switch off of fossil fuels as if we can just keep living how we're living. And it's this whole big lie. And I feel like that's where there's a similarity to what you're talking about. Like, these are huge lies that are at the foundation of what we're supposedly trying to fix. And you still have people just talking about like, oh, well, we'll just, you know, we'll do this or that. And they're so small. Like, you're not even anywhere near the problem. And it's really hard. That's why I don't have a whole lot of hope. But I do think it's important that I do the best that I can to make life as decent for everybody who's on it now, right? Like, that to me is just part of being in a collective. I guess that's my point.
And it's why when people look around and they wonder, you know, how did, you know, literally the island of Maui get set ablaze?
I can't believe.
That's a tropical island. And
have you ever been to Lahaina?
I've never been to.
Okay, I've been to Lahaina. Okay, so I've been to Lahaina. I've been to that town. I cannot even believe the picture. Like, it's crazy.
I saw the picture. It's very sad.
And the reason this happens, if there's one thing we should universally be able to agree upon when it comes to the environment, regardless of whether you think climate change is man-made or not, it's man-made from this perspective. We have deforested this planet to such a habitual degree that you are now seeing what actually happens when there's not enough green to go around and capture the carbon dioxide. It is going to dry out, continue. There is a reason why. I'm about to go to Austin, Texas for a few days. It's going to be 105 degrees pretty much every day. Now, that's not to say that that's totally uncommon in terms of it being very hot in the summer. But for Austin at this time of year, yeah, it's actually pretty hot. And why is that? Because it is a very barren state in so many ways. There has been overdevelopment in Texas as much as any.
Yeah, the concrete's not helping us, folks. I can point that out. The concrete is not helping.
So if we're not going to be conscious about the fact that we continue to pillage this planet and we continue to, you know, just dredge up and do all of these terrible things, if we do not reforest the planet, that is what will ultimately be our downfall. And that is not stopping. That is one thing that doesn't stop because people...
They can't stop mining it. They can't stop. They cannot stop sucking stuff out of it.
And why do they do that, Steve? Because everything is about money and power. If there was money in the soil, they're going to go get it. If it wasn't for China and Russia backing Venezuela, you better believe their asses would have been ours by now because of all that oil that's under the soil. And if that means that we have to pillage the shit out of their green land, which they have a shitload of, it doesn't matter. That's our oil and we want it, and we will basically bleed this planet dry. And until people recognize that that's what it's all about.
At some point, we're going to need to discuss Africa. Okay? We don't need to get into that now, but yeah.
Listen, I'm going to have to boogie because
I can't believe you sat here this long.
I know. But I want to leave you with a couple important thoughts, please. Number one, please check out our recent video from it's actually a podcast, but you can catch it on our Real Progressives YouTube channel in audio form. My interview with Jason Hickel. Please check it out. It is really, really important. Number one. Number two, please do read Jason Hickel's 2 books, The Divide and Less is More. Please, please, please read them. They are books that are guideposts for our future. Okay. And understand that Jason Hickel when I first met Jason Hickel, he was a positive money guy. He didn't really understand MMT. When he was on my show the other day, Jason Hickel broke out universal basic needs, broke out a job guarantee, and went full MMT. So
Okay.
Jason Hickel is my spirit animal. This is a man who gets it. Him, Fadl Kaboub, and just
We haven't
but
had him on
definitely, I know you know Fadl, but
Of course.
please invest yourself in Jason Hickel.
I will.
Check him out on Twitter. Check him out anywhere you can. Every word that comes out of his mouth right now.
Well, we'll invite
is-
him on
is-
if he'd come
he
on.
is-
Sometimes people,
well, Jason is
better off
a hard one to reach. I mean, it takes me months to get him on, but if you can get him, he is worth every second of your time. He is, to me,
he's
the
an
guy who's
economic
leading it.
anthropologist. Yes.
He is my hero. I mean,
Okay.
I say that unequivocally. He is absolutely my hero. And
Definitely me too, so I'll invite him on.
Well, you're definitely
Anyway.
you're definitely one of our heroes, and if you guys currently do not follow the real,
It's okay. You're
Progressives,
cutie poo too, Steve. You know.
as well as the Macro and Cheese podcast. Listen, you, Jordan, a handful of others, you have an open invitation. We would love to have you on once a month. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I know
It's hard.
that you're much more in your element where you're able to spit facts and not have to manage a show at the same
Yeah,
time.
whatever you want to do, man.
You really bring a wealth of knowledge that I think is very important. And
you know I'll be picking your brain at some point, not in the not too distant
Anytime. Look, I'm easy during, I can text, I can do it. It's just hard. I've got small children, lots of stuff going on. I work full time, run 2 nonprofits, and it's just, part of the arrangement there is that I support my family. And so I have an agreement, and that's why I don't do a lot of shows anymore. That's why I'm not available at night. It's not because I don't want to. I got a lot to say, as you can tell.
I know.
I just, I have to put my family first.
Absolutely.
I've done this for a long time, and I owe it to them. They've given me a lot of room to do this stuff, and that's just the agreement I had to make. So
No.
thank you for having me on.
And you know that you're always welcome
Thank
in
you,
all of the knowledge
Steve.
that you bring. Hopefully people will learn a thing or two. Go to the Real Progressives. Go to Macro and Cheese Podcast. Steve, we love you. A pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Bye, Steve.
Thank you very much. Have a good one, everybody.
Anytime, brother. So, of course, the conversation is always productive. And what I love about what has happened within this community, the MMT community in particular, is the fact that we do get a decent sized audience. And not only that, but a lot of people will see the clips that will follow.
Yeah.
That is what is important about what we do on our show. And I do believe that cross collaboration on the regular is actually very important because, people are going to want to watch what they're going to want to watch. But the consistency of the people who will join us when Steve is here is great.
And then the leftist mafia is live tonight too.
And the more people that see what we're doing. And look, I don't want to disparage anybody who's on the leftist mafia, but they're not having the type of conversations that we're having.
And but we are going to have to really seriously set aside some time, and I'm going to have to find a good guest and really talk about this whole Africa and AFRICOM situation, because this is a huge problem right now. And I don't think it's getting enough attention in the way that it should. And I think that this is a bigger problem than people realize. I think we are potentially heading towards a continental war in Africa.
Yes.
And I think that it's, and the worst part about it is it's through no real control of the people in Africa. So it's really just more proxy war bullshit. And it's really upsetting to me what's going on. We have been flat out asked by Niger to leave. We have been asked by a sovereign nation to leave. We have 1,000 troops there. France has something like 240,000 or whatever that are over in there because it was one of their colonies after all. And Niger has asked for us to leave. And Joe, they've said, nah, we're going to stay. I cannot with that. It really is. Oh, is that the person? Somebody make a note of this. Make a note of that.
Rob, if you could shoot us an email at
I have a couple of ideas of people. Actually, there was a really good gentleman I always get really good guest ideas from Democracy Now! He was on, I want to say he's a professor at Syracuse. He's a Pan-Africanist, and this is someone who really knew like everything about all of the different countries and all their different interrelationships. And so, thanks, Travers. And so that to me is the kind of person I'm looking for. I'm not looking for somebody to come from our political perspective. I don't care about our political perspective and our best interest. I am specifically looking at what's going on for the people in their countries that we somehow think are surrogates of our country because we just own everything. But to me, it looks like Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea are going to end up going to war with the rest of the Western African nations that are being supported by guess who. And so basically, this is yet another example of imperialism where it's just brazen. It's brazen. They said, please leave, and we're not leaving. So now we are officially illegally occupying yet one other sovereign nation.
Wuhan, we are, first of all, there's no such thing as authoritarian left, because if you're authoritarian, you're not on the left.
Do you want to know really how I don't like labels? I really don't. Like, I don't have an ism. I don't participate in anything. I am for regular people. I am for the least of these. I am for making sure that everybody has a life of dignity and gets justice. That is what I'm about. You can label that whatever you want. I am not in any way authoritarian. If anything, I would lean more towards like anarcho, but I'm also socialist. So, I mean, you can start, I don't know, pick your labels. All I know is that I care about the least of these, and I do not like the class war that we're in, and my goal is to neutralize that.
I believe in a hybrid system. That's where I stand.
I'm not with the capitalism like he is.
Well, no, I mean, I believe in a hybrid system of capitalism and socialism. That's what I believe. I believe that one can't be successful without the other. I believe that the human spirit demands an opportunity to succeed, but I also believe that socialism makes sure that there is a level playing field and also a guardrail against corporate and human greed.
Yeah.
And so without having those two together, you have nothing.
Well, and the key thing is what is handled within a capitalist economy versus what is handled in a socialist economy. And for me, things that are core necessities of a civilization, that are investments for us as people, things like education, healthcare, those are things that should never be for profit. And I don't mean that there can't be private schools too. Sure, have at it. But in terms of what's provided, and and corrections, healthcare, education, like there's certain things that need to be taken off the profit table in order to have a functioning, healthy civilization. We don't have that.
$5 a month gets you the Lulu sticker. $10 a month gets you our last Mansion Parliamentarian.
I'm getting ready to take those away from him and come up with something else. I have to do it.
$25 gets you the generational change jersey, baseball style jersey.
They're really cute, guys.
And if you just want to make a contribution without putting your credit card on the grid,
we appreciate it. And you can join YouTube now.
Yes, go to Cash App $GenChange. Obviously, that would be very much appreciated. And all support would be appreciated. If you want to become a YouTube member, that would be very much appreciated. And of course, we are extremely grateful for our wonderful supporters in the chat.
Thank you guys so much.
Double K, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your contribution. Jesus, $5 super sticker.
I'm calling him the Jesus.
The Jesus.
Let me tell you something.
Don't mess with the Jesus.
Don't mess with the Jesus.
And Kat, Faye, Garrett, thank you so much for your $3 super sticker.
You guys are it's really sweet. It really is, and it's very helpful. And it really does. I mean, all of them, we don't make money here, obviously. We're not. But everything that comes in goes towards service, and then small amounts to paying the people that are helping us do this. And that's basically it. But we really appreciate it. Like, for example, if you're new, I do homeless hygiene packs or unhoused people hygiene packs. I don't want to, be rude, but like that's the kind of stuff that we do here. I mean, what other kind of good stuff do we do?
Well, I like the fact that we get conservatives like Metalopoly who say, I'm fine with a mixed system. Well, there you go.
That's what we need.
Says all that he says, but he's saying that he's okay with socialism as long as it's mixed with capitalism. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. That is the future, because that's where the most amount of people are willing to come together.
Metalopoly, the answer.
Be able to get that. Now, I will also comment on John Cowles. Why is Melopoly allowed to post here? His arguments are counterproductive.
Because we don't censor.
Because I believe in the First Amendment. That's why.
And now, technically, that doesn't apply here. However, we believe in the freedom of speech in general. But I don't mind people. I don't even mind mild trolling. He's never mean.
No.
I don't mind that. When people are mean or rude about really, that I'm not going to have. I don't need mean shit.
This
but
is
he's
why
not mean.
this is why conservatives and commies like our friend John here actually do like to go at it, because the fact is we need tough people in our society who actually can, even on social media, can throw barbs at each other, but at the end of the day say, okay, well, is there something we can find some agreement
Melopoly, and one thing that when you're talking about the difference between a social safety net versus a hammock, I completely agree, which is why I am a proponent of federal jobs guarantee. And federal jobs guarantee is not paying people for doing nothing. That's a UBI. UBI, the problem I have with it, and again, I am all for helping people, like especially when there's an emergency, I am all for helping people. And if people want that, I support it. I'm not against it, okay? But the problem I have with it, as Steve has very well explained to me, is that the U means that the person making 100 grand and the person making 12 grand are getting the same thing. But what happens when you do that, to me, it's basically like the reverse of a flat tax. It's essentially regressive, because what you're going to have is you're going to have landlords and other people raising prices because they're going to know there's all this new money in the system, except the people that are at the bottom end getting that $1,000 or whatever it is, it's nowhere near enough to meet their needs. And now the prices are going to go up, and that's not helping, because what you're doing is you're putting money into the economy without any sort of service or resource coming back out of it. And so that allows for it to be abused. That allows for price gouging. So again, I am all in favor of helping people, but I think we need to really transition over. Like I'm feeling confident, guys, that the federal jobs guarantee is really the best solution that I see on the table for a lot of things. It would also solve the minimum wage problem.
And a federal jobs guarantee, you have to understand, in a hybrid system, if it was a mix of capitalism and socialism, is absolutely called for right now. Why? Because even in a hybrid system, what are we in right now? We are in, from a worker's perspective, we are in a bear market of the worst kind. People can't afford to live. They can't afford to put food on the table. They cannot afford to put money away. They can't afford to do any of these things. And Lord knows, for example, and this is one of the biggest criticisms that I have of the Biden administration, the audacity of this administration to claim that their infrastructure bill was good.
Wait. I didn't even notice the infrastructure bill.
What
was the infrastructure? You mean the thing that was supposed to be attached to build the thing that was supposed to be attached to Build Back Better, but then it wasn't because of the parliamentarian and Joe Manchin? Is that the thing?
If we really had an economy that was working on behalf of working people, which we clearly do not have right now, there are a lot of things that would change as far as that's concerned. And a federal jobs guarantee would afford that opportunity, because there's a lot of people who need to be put to work. There's a lot of people who wish that they could work, and they could work with a job that allows them to live.
And I don't think people understand how it works. And to be honest with you all, I don't completely yet either, but I'm going to. And I am going to have it down pat, is to be able to explain it really crystal clear. But what I do know there are people that have figured this out and have shown that this can work and how it works. So
here is the point that Melopoly is making, that I want him and everybody else who's conservative
completely
to understand. If you have capitalism without socialism, it will inevitably lead to this.
Which, by the way,
this is where it goes.
And then where does that go?
To fascism.
But what's so fascinating to me are all the people that are so scared about Trump because he's a fascist, which, by the way, Trump isn't a fascist. He's an idiot.
Biden and DeSantis are much closer to fascists than Donald Trump.
They are. It's true.
Donald Trump's an authoritarian. That goes without saying.
Right. I think people always confuse things because they don't understand that words have meanings. But what we do know, and we have shown repeatedly on this show, we've had so many people come on, authors, interviews that we've done, that what leads to fascism is neoliberalism. Okay. Neoliberal policy leads to corporate ownership, leads to fascism. That's how it goes. And that's where we are. So if you think somehow voting for Joe is better, it isn't. It isn't. And by the way, every day that man does something else that just makes me just lose my mind in terms of the people that actually think there's a difference between him and any Republican. He is literally appointing Republican tools
About Victoria Nuland.
between her and Elliot Abrams. I'm like losing it. When you appoint someone like Victoria Nuland to be your second in command, what you are
Why
saying.
don't you just hire John Bolton?
He's next. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't working behind the scenes. When
sure
you put someone like her in that office, this what I read is you want boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Oh, absolutely.
You want troops in Ukraine. That is what that message sends to me. So then when someone tries to argue to me that he is the lesser of two evils, I don't see it that way. I just don't see it that way.
Raina, we are with you 1,000%. And speaking of fascism that is really creeping up on us, and let me tell you, even if there is any merit whatsoever to this idea that State Attorney Monique Harrell of Osceola County, Florida,
this actually happened.
For whatever reason, was not properly prosecuting criminals. Let me assure you, there is probably a rap sheet that is out there. But there are two reasons that I believe, and I obviously would love to hear your thoughts on this, but there are two reasons why I do believe that she got the boot from the state attorney's office in Orlando. And keep in mind.
I can tell you just from looking at the picture why
I'm not going there. Okay. But what I will say is that there's two things. Keep in mind, she is a new state attorney. So she has no track record whatsoever, and she is overseeing what is one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country. Orlando, Florida it's not going to overtake Miami, but it is hands down the second most populous city in the third most populous state in the country. If you have any idea what it's like to work in the state attorney's office and how many cases are constantly being thrown your way, there's a reason why she has dismissed a significant number of cases. It's because most of them do not merit taking to court. This idea that she's allowing rapists and murderers and people who really deserve to be in prison, just kicking them out,
that's not how this works.
I guarantee you that overwhelmingly what she has dismissed is nonviolent drug offenders. That's probably the number one thing. They
have called her out on a bunch of different things. Like this person was brought back in, had a previous charge. She didn't hold him. He killed somebody. And there are cases like that. Those things happen. But the fact that this is what they harp on when it is not the majority of things is just fear mongering. And the reality is, people, this is the nature of our system is supposed to be that we would rather 100 guilty people go free than one innocent person go to jail. And I stand by that. I agree with that. And when you have policy that is according to that, yes, there are times when people who do harm to people are fall through the cracks. That does happen. It also happens that people who don't do things spend time in prison. That happens too. And it's just, that's the nature of living in a free world. There are going to be outliers. But what I do know is that and I've never met this woman. I don't know anything about her, but I would bet that she has been busting ass doing the best she can within the law that she has to work with, within the resources that she has. So the same people that are probably criticizing her for not doing this or that or the other are the same people that weren't giving her the budget to hire enough people to do what she needs to do. So be aware that the same hand that is getting rid of her is the same hand that's controlling her budget. So I don't know what that is. Okay. So you could sit there and point out every bad case. I don't know enough about it to comment, but what I do see is a Black woman. That's what I see right there. And I will not, I refuse to find that there is no correlation in our situation in this state right now.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Wednesday announced the suspension of the Orlando area state attorney, the second time he has removed a democratically elected prosecutor whose politics did not align
That's a whole
with
other
his
issue,
conservative views. He was removing Monique Farrell on Florida's 9th Judicial Circuit for neglect of duty and incompetence, and accused her of pursuing lenient sentences and declining to prosecute certain charges. All right, so without even going further, here's what you need to understand here. There is a major housing crisis in the state of Florida. There is a major insurance crisis in the state of Florida. And this is
environmental.
Sure. And this is a lady who has made it very clear that she is in favor of rent control. Do you know who isn't in favor of rent control? The National Association of Realtors, real estate developers, anybody who...
Your people.
Listen,
Your
don't look
people.
at me. I know that it's a crisis, and I'm very well aware, and I agree that we have a serious problem here.
So is that what you think it is somewhat linked to, that she was a proponent of
Oh,
that?
in
Or, I mean, it's probably a bunch
in
of
Orlando, she's pushing for rent control in Orlando. Oh no, they went to DeSantis like get that freaking woman out of there.
Yeah, and
We
I bet
can't
they
have
didn't
that.
say it quite that way. But my problem is this, and we talked about this forever ago with Scott Israel when this happened with Scott Israel. The fact that this is the second state attorney, but people, it is by no means just the second person. This seems to be a pattern. This is authoritarian. What is happening is you have somebody who is in an executive branch removing unilaterally without due process, a democratically elected person in a position that they were elected to, whether it was judicial, legislative, or executive, right? We're talking about people that were elected positions. Our state attorneys are elected. So that is, to me, the biggest, glaringest problem here, is that even if you have those issues with her, and I said this about with Scott Israel, whatever your issues are, then you need to have due process for that person before you remove somebody who is democratically elected by the majority of people in their district.
Worrell, who said she was informed of her suspension Wednesday morning by phone, vowed to fight back against her removal, calling it a political hit job orchestrated to benefit the Republicans' presidential campaign. I am a duly elected state attorney for the 9th Judicial Circuit. Worrell said at a news conference outside the Orange County Courthouse in Orlando, and nothing done by a weak dictator can change that. That is a dictatorial approach that he has utilized, and he believes that that is what is going to get him elected, however asinine that may seem, but that is the card that he is playing. The problem, of course, is that he is losing, and the most recent poll that came out, I think it may have been Gallup, is that, as I predicted just a few weeks ago, Vivek Ramaswamy is now in second place and is ahead of Ron DeSantis in the presidential polls.
Yeah, that I saw coming too with him. Because, But, guys, the whole concept of removing an elected person in that way without process, that is definitively fascist. Like we're there. We're there. We have an executive officer that is taking out elected people without process. Like, that's the dark side.
Yes.
We're on the dark side.
And luckily, for now, he is the only superior elected official in this nation that is doing this. The problem, of course.
Do we know that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's
we haven't heard of it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Under these circumstances, it's totally different because these are not like long-time state attorneys that had a track record and they were really bad. Andrew Warren and Monique Worrell are new. These are new people with new ideas that do not jive, quite frankly, with corporate special interests. And when you want to get the most powerful job in the world, knowing full well what it takes to get it and who is basically in control of Sands operations.
We need to reach out to Anna Eskamani and figure out if they're doing anything on the ground in terms of
it seems like they
are. Because this is absurd. Like it's just not okay. The voters there who voted for these people should be outraged.
They should. And the people
I'm outraged, and I didn't vote for them.
And it isn't a question of her winning by a slim margin and that her ideas were wrong. She won with 2/3 of the vote. She won in a landslide.
This is like the crap that was going on in Tennessee with the Justins. It's like you can keep trying to remove very popular people, but they will find their way back. It's just you might slow things down, but it's not going to stop it. Like this woman was elected. I would
just
be
do not
so
understand.
furious.
Like I said, it would be one thing if they had come out and keep in mind, and don't get me wrong, there is a crime problem in Florida. The Miami cop killer that ended up killing the 2 cops in Orlando, for some reason, it seems like she's getting blamed for that. Like it's her fault that these two officers were killed by a guy who was a murderer in Miami, stole a car, got flagged in Orlando, decided to take his shot at two cops, which he did, and then got himself killed in the process, and rightfully so.
And no one's
but
bringing
somehow
down here.
it's her fault.
And no one,
It's
like,
her fault
law
that this
enforcement
happened.
here.
You're running out of real estate, Ron. Like, I don't know.
And he knows about real estate.
Like, where does he think he's going with this? Who does he think he's impressing is also the question.
A very small group of people that he is hoping are the base and the voters that are going to come out for him in the primary. That's all he can be doing.
Let me tell you something. There is, it's very interesting between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Metalopoly, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You're right. He's not particularly doing that yet, but believe you me, he would.
Oh,
It isn't
100%.
for. It isn't for.
He's
Right.
the governor. He's doing it right now.
It isn't
level.
because, it isn't because he wouldn't do it. It's just you haven't heard about it. It hasn't come up yet. He's not above it.
And if there is one thing that is a huge and obviously glaring difference between DeSantis and Biden, I trust that Ron DeSantis is almost unilaterally making these decisions. He's making these calls.
Yes.
He's going.
That I do.
Whereas with Joe Biden, I don't believe anything he does. I firmly believe every decision he makes is him being told to do this.
By Anthony Blinken or any other person.
Pretty much. Maybe even by Dr.
Dr. Jill.
I always called it Dr. Stein.
Dr. Jill.
Dr. Jill herself telling him what to do.
But Jill Stein's an actual doctor.
Well, I wasn't disputing that. Jen caught a lot of heat back in the summer of 2020 when she questioned the fact that the First Lady wanted to be referred to as Dr. Biden.
I don't question it. I know what it is. It's ego and it's annoying. It's
definitely
elitist and it's ego and it's annoying, and the world needs less of it. And I don't care that
Do you know
she's
what the
qualified.
technicality is for somebody who actually is to be called doctor? Do you know what the technical requirement is? Can you prescribe medication? If you cannot prescribe medication, you are not authorized to be recognized as a doctor. But unfortunately, in the academia world, people, especially in high liberal society,
Right.
love titles.
It's
they love
so
titles. They love credentials.
pretentious, and it is all the reasons
But it's
why.
ego and it's about classism. It's so classist.
But this is why when people want to know why the working class people aren't wanting to get in with the Democrats, and why the Democrats, because of stuff like to me, the fact of that whole nonsense about her title is so symbolic of what is wrong with that party, and they just cannot get out of their own way. Yes, Jill, I realize you have a PhD. Whoop-de-doo-da-day. But it's like the fact that people want recognition for it. By the way, call me Esquire.
And it would certainly make a lot more sense. And there was a point that I was trying to make before. If we had a balanced society, if we had healthcare, if we had a living wage, if we had a healthy environment, if we didn't have endless war, if we had a just justice system, you can nitpick on all these little things and we can have a conversation about it. But right now, what we have is a broken system and people are dying and they're desperate.
Yeah, we're in a bad
scared.
way. We're in a bad way, which is so scary, because then people who are uninformed are so susceptible to being misinformed, and the misinformed are so much more difficult to deal with than the uninformed.
And maybe above every other reason why DeSantis is going to fail, not just because of his authoritarian exploitation. It's not a question of whether he has tendencies. He's absolutely in it. In that is who he's become. He's basically become a dictator. That's how he conducts business. That's bad enough. Then you throw in the 6-week abortion ban. And that's beyond authoritative. That is fascist, because there is a belief that the state, in conjunction with corporate interests, can control the people. That is his intent. And if that's not enough, add one more layer. There is no one in this country who wants to see Donald Trump go to federal prison for the rest of his life more than Ron DeSantis. He wants that spot.
It occurs to me that I'm taller than Ron, which I kind of find entertaining, because I do think he's a very small man in so many ways. But the abortion ban is ultimately, for me, what pushed him out of the realm of being accepted by mainstream anybody. That was it. Because for most people, like if you're somebody in, I don't know, Oregon or wherever you are, and you know of this person, you're not necessarily knowing all the stuff about them removing people, doing all these other things. But you sure as hell know that they signed a 6-week abortion ban. And we know that that's very unpopular.
And we know this for a fact because he did a town hall in New Hampshire at the beginning of this week, and he sidestepped the question of abortion. And the crowd didn't like it. And eventually it made the news.
Yeah.
So that's how you know.
Because we are now, Florida is now, well, when it goes into effect, I forget when it goes into effect. It's either in October or November. But we will be living under a 6-week abortion ban until it gets on the ballot next November. And then even if it gets voted in, it wouldn't be until like probably after that. So you're looking at a little over a year's worth of people that are going to be in peril. Like, I don't think people really understand the gravity of the situation. The female, the mother and infant mortality rates are going to be through the roof here in Florida. And as that happens, that will come out, and that will not look good.
And think of it this way. In the worst universe possible, where Joe Biden does end up becoming the nominee again and wins again, who is to say that we don't codify Roe in the state of Florida? And because of DeSantis knowing that his only other option in politics is the state of Florida, and that is going to be solely dependent because he can't go away for a long time. He's the type of person who basically is going to be left with deciding if he's going to run against Rick Scott or Marco Rubio to try to get to the U.S. Senate. And and the reason I'm bringing this up is because let's say that we do codify Roe. Do you really think that he doesn't have it in his mind that he's going to be like, F him, I ain't doing shit, and you're still not getting it? Who's to say that? Do you really think Joe Biden, who is a Catholic and personally, I don't care what anyone thinks, is anti-choice as well, is going to all of a sudden use federal authority to come after Ron DeSantis and say, no, you're passing this? He won't do anything. So it's easy to see why we're sinking where we're sinking. So we have to stop worrying about the petty bullshit and focus on the things that matter. A woman's right to choose is a civil liberty. It's a bodily autonomy. It is a necessity for society to function. And everyone who is of a religious mindset always treats it as, well, a woman needs to take responsibility for her promiscuity. You're a small-minded individual, and you need to recognize that there are many reasons why a woman needs to have the right to choose. There are health issues. There is rape. There is incest. There is life of the child, life of the mother. And yes, sometimes somebody just decides that they are not going to bring a child into this world for whatever reason that may be.
Quite honestly, given the world we're in,
why would you?
Well, that let me tell you, that is something that makes me sad for my sons, like, because I as much as I love the idea of at some point being a grandmother, I don't want that. Like, I don't want it. This is no place to be bringing people into. We're going to be looking at really some sort of apocalyptic shit in a couple of generations with people fighting over clean water. Right. But it's going to start to become more and more prevalent. Violence, fires, like, we're really getting to this place. It is not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. So yeah, the idea of forcing people to have children when you're not willing to help in any way. The same people that want them to have children don't want to pay for prenatal care. They don't want to pay for paid family leave. They don't want to educate these kids. They don't want to feed these kids. They don't want to do anything for these kids. So they're not pro-life, okay? They're forced birth, and they're anti-woman.
And I will leave you guys with this thought. You know, the movie Sound of Freedom is done very well at the box office. And yes, child trafficking, sex trafficking is a cottage industry. It is
forever.
It is an epidemic.
And
it is a serious problem. And and the worse an economy gets, the worse this gets. How do you think most kids and women end up getting into sex trafficking? It's because the environment that they're brought up in is unsafe.
You mean the people that weren't kidnapped and
I'm
stolen? You're talking about people that run away, or people that end up in a bad way so that they're susceptible and vulnerable, because there are people that literally are just taken off the streets.
But the overwhelming majority of those that end up in that world are there because of the life circumstances that are thrown in front of them. So if you truly care about child abuse and making sure that we live in a just society, and you recognize that not everybody is capable of putting themselves in that situation for one reason or another. And when somebody says, well, why don't you birth the child and give it up for adoption? Do you know how much it costs to have a baby in this country? I bet you don't know.
No, it isn't even just that, though. You know what? What if you just don't want to be pregnant and give away your baby?
I'm trying to share the sentiment of where the mindset is, of what they're thinking.
No, this is the point.
But
that's the point. And here's the biggest point of all: mind your business. That's it. That's what, like, that's the kind of thing. Like my grandmother would say, I'd be looking at that. Mind your business. Just mind your business.
I don't have any issue with a Christian. I'm not even going to get into this. The point is this. Understand that whatever you want to believe, you should be entitled to believe it. That's why we have this thing in the First Amendment called the separation of church and state. And
right.
I don't want to hear any interpretation other than the state is designed so that your faith is not impeded upon, nor is it impeded on others' ability to believe
right.
something other than what you believe.
Right. If
that's what the separation of church and state is.
That's the problem. The problem is ultimately, at the end of the day, the anti-choice people, it's based on religion. And the problem with that is it is not what we need to be using to make policy. Policy should be based on reason, science, facts, but not on religion. Okay, that's a problem. Because then what if I were to say to you, well, my religion is, I have a religion of, abortion for all. My religion is that I think everybody should have abortions because that's my religion. I believe that. I think that if you have abortions, what you're doing is you're putting all these beautiful unborn babies up into the heavens, wherever my God lives. And that just keeps God so happy. And so I think abortions is what everybody should have. That's my religion. See how this is the problem with people who don't understand, like when you take things to their extreme, it doesn't work well. So you only think of it from your perspective because you only think of it from the perspective of your religion. But I tell you, there are many. And then there are those of us that choose none. And that is just, we don't want to be governed by your religion any more than I'd want to be governed by the religion of somebody who made people have abortions.
If people truly believed in the true concepts of what this book represents, if people really followed the Constitution, really followed it, we wouldn't have the extremisms in society that we have. The problem, of course, is that people pick and choose what they want to believe within the founding document. On the one hand, it is set in stone, and on the other hand, it is a living, breathing document. Not that you have to change what's been written, but that you can always add new amendments. Those are the ways that you actually advance society. But we're not doing it.
Well, the key thing I always ask people is, at the end of the day, do you support the concept of majority rule? Because that's ultimately what we think of as a functional democracy, is majority rule. Now, what just happened in Ohio, where they were obviously a whole hell of a lot smarter than Floridians were, because we actually have that. We have to have a 60% threshold for ballot initiatives here. That already passed here. They actually did that right after we gave formerly incarcerated people their rights to vote back. That was the next session. They were able to push through to raise the threshold to 60%. So we have that draconian shit here. And basically the premise is, and this is for people like Metalopoly or anybody, if you are in the minority viewpoint, you need to accept, if you believe in the idea of democracy, that you're not getting your way on some of those issues. That's just reality. Like for me, I'm vehemently opposed to capital punishment, always have been. We'll debate it with anybody, anytime, anyhow, don't care, I'm not for it. But I understand that most people support it, and therefore I don't get my way. And that's just the way it is. What bothers me is what we're seeing are people wanting to take away the concept of majority rule, and they're actually okay knowing that they have a minority opinion and yet imposing it on the majority of people. So what you're saying is that you are not in favor of democracy, because any poll will show you, you can look and see whether or not your views are in line with the majority of people. And when you do that, if your views are not in line with the majority of people, suck it up, buttercup. And that's the problem. It isn't about like whether or not we agree or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant whether or not I agree with you on abortion. The bottom line is most people support it. End of story.
And why do you think that people are so up in arms about it right now, where we stand? Because our rights are being eroded. That's why they are having the gall to try to take things like a woman's right to choose away. Because once that goes, other things go. Now, it is unfortunate that the right to choose is such a classist issue because it's an issue that people with ways and means give a damn about because it personally affects them. People with ways and means don't care about universal health care as a whole because it doesn't personally affect them. We are a very, very selfish culture. And the only reason why women are standing up to support a right to choose is because this is an issue that actually means a lot to women in high and comfortable places. So as a result, they are going to take this fight very seriously, and they will give a lot of money and resources to make sure that it stands. As far as things like healthcare, living wage, most people hate labor. They won't say it publicly, but you can hear it, you can sense it, just like people are deep down bigoted in their beliefs, much as they will only talk about what's going on in Ukraine, and they will not talk about what's going on in Yemen, in Syria, in Somalia. They will not talk about it because, again, everything is structured a certain way. So remember,
or currently Niger and whatever
perfect
else
example.
nonsense is going, oh my God,
If
this
you
is a
think-
big deal,
if
people.
you think what's happening in Ukraine is bad, you wait till Niger. And I'll
This
tell
is
you
a
why.
big problem.
Because in Ukraine, you're dealing with things like minerals and specifically wheat, which is food, and all those things are possible. But, you know, we're living in a world today where you could build things in a test tube. In Niger, you know what's there? Cobalt,
Uranium.
lithium. That's what runs this effing world. And if you think that we will not go to World War III over what's there, you're nuts.
And guess what? The people who live there, the African people in their respective countries, they have this crazy idea, that they should be able to determine their own government and what to do with their resources in their country. It's crazy. And yet we don't think that. France doesn't think that. And they're done with us. They're done. They are done. These are very resolved people. I can tell, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 now of these countries that have been militarily taken over against what we would consider our team. Because let's be real, we have a horse in every race. And they also want AFRICOM out. They want us out. All of those countries want us out, and we won't get out. Can you imagine? This is what's so, people are so, this would be the equivalent. This would be the equivalent if, let's say, I don't know, China just decided to come over here, China, and put up some military bases and have a presence here and start training their people here and just start being here. And then we say, you know, we'd really like you to leave. And they say, nah, we're going to just stay and hang out here. That's what we're doing in these countries. And it's fascinating to me that there are people, and I mean, I guarantee you that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is with Joe Biden and with all of them, with that ECOWAS, with that other group of Africans that are basically have been completely subjected to colonial imperialism and are now completely on board. They're the ones that are making it easy for the other nations to also keep having their settler colonialism.
And people are getting
gonna be a
tired
problem.
of this. That's why, like I said, they say workers of the world unite. Not from my perspective. Again, I'm not communist. I'm not even socialist. But I recognize that we are living at a time where labor must unite. We are being overrun by the oligarchic donor class of the world, not just the United States. Collectively speaking, they are all in it together, and they are willing to kill billions of people. And if they have to start again in 30 years, and it's going to take several centuries to build it back up again, then so be it. Because they know that there is a great awakening that's happening in this world right now. There's a reason why Klaus Schwab is becoming a talking point.
I need to address this. Leftists shouldn't overplay the facts and science card when most leftist values are based on spiritual qualities like love, compassion, etc. Science and facts are not inherently pro-labor. See, I have so many problems with this because I understand what you're saying. Like, we generally think of the left as like the hippy-dippy spiritual people. But here's the thing, like, I am left, and I assure you, I am very facts, reason, evidence, and I also very much care about the collective and other people and wanting to help people. So all of those, and by the way, science and facts, I don't think anything is inherently pro-labor, but it's like if I'm pro-labor and I also accept science, reason, and facts, like those both things can be true. That's all I'm saying. Like I don't, you know, I will always play the facts and science card because that's how you bring people together, because that's what we need to be using to create policies, facts and science. Yes.
Labor and management are supposed to balance on scale. And right now, labor is down here and management is all the way up here. The scale is going to tip over in a minute. So recognize, much like if a market is a bull market, you raise taxes. When it is a bear market, you lower taxes. Not when it's a bear and a bull, you lower taxes across the board.
Well, and Bijou, that's also the difference between someone who is like more socialist versus someone who is more libertarian. So like I can, you know, prioritize facts and reason, but yes, the solidarity and unity is the only thing. Like none of us is getting out of here alive. My mom always says that, and it's true. Okay. None of us is getting out of here alive. That's not how this works. So the best we can do is try to get along and make the world better for everyone in it, which by the way, makes it better for ourselves. This is what amazes me. How is anybody better off with people unhealthy and uneducated running around? How is that better off for anybody? Like, I prefer my people, my fellow people, to be educated and healthy. Why is that? Like, I don't understand how anybody thinks that could better you. So I do understand the nature of the collective, the most important thing. It really is. And the people who don't understand that, it's like you're just keeping us all down and weak by not understanding the strength in the collective. It's all we have, because we're not going to be able to beat like the power by getting as much money as them. You know, the only thing we have is collectivism in terms of getting anything that satisfies us. So, you know, I understand that that's very important.
This is why labor needs to unite. Point blank, period. And it needs to happen now. Smash the like button, subscribe, share, comment, do all those wonderful things I ask you to do. This has been an extremely lively broadcast.
So Metalopoly, very quickly, let me tell you, I can talk to anybody, anytime, anyhow. And I was recently talking to a friend of mine's husband who is a Marine. He's an attorney and he works for Lockheed. Okay. So this is, and he's Republican and he's conservative. And he and I had a really good conversation and we agree on a lot of things. And it's always easy to talk to people if people would just be reasonable. Okay. That's the key difference. And usually religion and reason are not necessarily the same when we're talking about things like the abortion issue. But when we can have everybody come to the table with reason, we can get things done. And also it helps that most people that are reasonable and have a brain also recognize that party tribalism, even if you're a member of either side, is just a bunch of horseshit. And that was something that he and I definitely, when you're somebody who's paying attention, regardless of what team you have to affiliate with, you recognize that your team sucks too. That's the truth. If you're gung-ho, your team is great, you're not paying attention.
Pay attention. We'll see you Monday.